While the political debate rages about what Australia should do to tackle greenhouse emissions and who should pay the bill, many of the country's farmers are already on the front foot. Whether you believe climate change is caused by burning fossil fuels or not, Australia's weather patterns in the past decade have forced people to change the way they farm. And among those leading the way are the country's dairy farmers.
At first glance, climate change wouldn't appear to be much of an issue in the hinterland of the New South Wales south coast. In parts of this valley, they'll get 2 metres of rain a year. No irrigation worries here. Michael and Lynn Strong run Clover Hill Dairies at Jamboree.
There's probably no doubt the climate has changed. It's probably got a bit hot, a bit warmer than it used to be, and the rainfall's a little bit irregular than it used to be. Though we're probably still getting the same amount, but it seems to come in larger volumes. So therefore we have to change our practices a little bit on how we fertilise so we don't get any runoffs into the creeks, and so we have to watch the weather more than we probably did once upon a time.
Far too much energy is being wasted debating climate change. Isn't it or isn't it happening? It doesn't matter. What we do know is less than 7% of Australia is suitable for food production, and the farmers producing that food are finding the resources to do so becoming increasingly scarcer and more expensive.
Against this background, though, the Strongs have expanded rapidly in recent years, so their son can be part of the business.
Always wanted to come back and do this. I just wanted to go and finish year 12 and then come back to farming, and this is what we've always done, so it's what I wanted to do.
One of the ways they've grown is by milking 3 times a day.
When we milk 3 times a day, we get about 25% increase in production, and by doing that, we don't have to milk 25% more cows. And we do that because we haven't got the area to accommodate 25% more cows, so this is one way of producing more milk.
It's a milking regime which requires more out of each animal, which means more must go into each animal. So they're fed wheat and corn during milking, as well as a customised nutritional pellet. Having the cows in the dairy more often also means their diet can be more finely tuned and animal health more closely regulated.
Feeding them 3 times a day in the dairy instead of twice allows you to feed more concentrates without upsetting the cows. If you get on twice a day, if you get too much concentrate, you can get acidosis and things like that from feeding too heavily in the dairy. So that's one advantage as well.
And it has another effect. It means roughly a 25% reduction in the amount of methane produced for every litre of milk. But to get to this point's required a lot of work elsewhere.
This is the original Jamboree Dairy Factory, built in 1928. It has very strong connections for me. Firstly, my uncle and my grandfather had the dairy next door. My aunt worked at the factory for 40 years.
When the Strongs decided to expand their dairy operation, they understood they had to become more efficient, not just bigger. So they started looking at every aspect of the business.
We've now got gravity-fed water troughs in all paddocks. That allows you to fence off your waterways, so that improves the quality of water for your cows. Other things that we have done are upgrade all our laneways. Now this, of course, improves cow comfort. What it really importantly does is faster cow flow means that you've got cows spending more time on the land, on the pasture, less time on the laneways. Nutrients stay on the pasture where they should be and not in the waterways.
Land in this area is expensive, about $70,000 a hectare. It's a popular spot for second homes and tree changes. The Strongs have their own holdings here, but they quickly realised that sinking all their money into buying property was leaving them no money to grow the milk business. So now they lease the extra land they need.
Obviously, we've now grown our business. We're milking 400 cows, but that means we've actually got 800 cows. So there has to be places where we can run the cows that aren't in the milking herds. So we've now been able to lease 1,000 acres in this region and run a very profitable business in probably the best area to run a dairy in Australia.
Everything they're doing here has one central goal: to increase efficiency, to grow as much feed as the land and rainfall will support, and get the cows to convert as much of that into milk. So they're putting a lot of effort into pastures. Consultant Neil Moss has been helping them change the pasture mix.
We've got a mix of herbs and legumes in here, and we've moved away from the traditional grass-based pastures that we've been using in this area for many years now.
Climate change predictions envisage this nominally high rainfall area as even wetter and perhaps a little hotter.
I think with an operation like this, we have to understand the realities of climate variability even in this environment. We have to be able to capture the water when it falls by growing efficient grasses. At the same time, we have to have enough cows here to actually utilise that, otherwise you run into large costs associated with conservation of fodder that may not be of great quality when it's conserved.
More milk per hectare, more milk per is all well and good, but it also creates higher risk. The margin for error is much smaller. And all this in an environment where other expectations must be met as well.
The dairying community is going to be under increased scrutiny, and it's going to be a tremendous challenge for farmers to do the things that the public wants them to do, to produce efficiently, to continue to produce humanely, and to minimise emissions. And at the same time, we have a public that will need to pay for that.
At Clover Hill, Michael and Lynn Strong can reflect on a decade of change.
Well, today's consumers want food that it's produced in a way that is consistent with their personal values. So I believe that farmers who can meet or exceed those expectations will be the successful primary producers of the future.
We probably do a better job now than we did. We have to grow grass better. We have to do a lot of things a lot better.
At Rochester